Hey everybody, my name's Ryan, and here at Etrailer we install, test fit, and review a lot of different parts. That way we could try to answer any questions those of you might have. And that's exactly what we're doing here today on our 2020 Nissan Leaf. We're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the EcoHitch 2-inch trailer hitch receiver. So putting a hitch on the Leaf actually does make life a lot more convenient. I know a lot of our customers like to use bike racks and accessories, things like that. Well, having a hitch back here is going to allow you to do that and really help free up some space on the inside of your vehicle. You're not going to be having to load up all your equipment and your bikes in the back here inside, when you can just get a rack, hang them back here where they're out of the way and easy to get to. And not to mention, you can also do some light duty towing with this. We actually see many of our customers do indeed do that. So whenever moving day comes, or let's say you got to run to the home improvement store to grab some material, whatever the case may be, you can always throw a cargo carrier back here or hook up your light duty trailer and get the job done. And since this does have a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, you're going to have a ton of different choices as far as what accessories you can use, and that's because this is a very common size. It's going to have a reinforced collar here for extra strength. And honestly, I think it looks pretty good too. It is going to have the standard 5/8 pinhole. Now keep in mind, a pin and clip does not come included, but if you need one, you can grab it right here at Etrailer. And we are going to have plate style safety chain openings, which they do sit a little bit further back, so they're going to be out of the way from your pin and clip. And they're going to give us enough room to use just about any size hook that we might have. One thing I do like is the way the hitch is going to look on the back of the Nissan. For the most part, it's going to be completely hidden. Really, the only thing you're going to be able to see here is a receiver tube opening. And more importantly, it's going to sit up nice and tight to the bottom of your vehicle. So with these Leafs not riding super high off the ground in the first place, you really don't want to add a big bulky thing hanging way down close to the ground, and that's not the case with this one. So as far as your ground clearance goes, really shouldn't have to worry too much about that. And as a bonus, the hitch actually is made from recycled materials as well. As far as the hitch's weight capacities go, it's going to have a 300-pound maximum gross tongue weight rating, and that's going to be the amount of weight that's pushing down on the hitch. So that's good for those 1 to 3, maybe even 4 bike racks, for example, just depending on how much your bikes actually weigh. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, it's going to be 2,000 pounds, and that's going to be the amount of weight that's pulling on the hitch. So that is the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. And I do always suggest, never a bad idea, just to grab your Nissan's owner's manual. That way you can make sure your Leaf can pull that much weight safely. Now I'm going to give you a couple of measurements, and you can use these to help figure out which hitch-mounted accessories to get. From the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be about 12 inches. So if you do plan on doing some light-duty towing, chances are pretty good you're going to need to get a ball mount with a rise. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 4 inches. And you can use that measurement to help figure out that if any folding accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without contacting the bumper. And if you do plan on doing some light duty towing, I would suggest picking up some trailer wiring. That way the lights on your trailer will match up with the lights on the back of your Nissan, and you'll be safe and legal. But other than that, a hitch you really can't go wrong with. You know, it looks good, has some good weight capacities, and because of that 2-inch by 2-inch opening, it's really going to allow us to use a ton of different accessories. Now, as far as the installation goes, believe it or not, it's really not too bad. You are going to have to remove the underbody panel, but more or less, it's just going to bolt right into place. So it shouldn't take you a whole lot of time or give you a whole lot of issues. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Leaf, and what we need to do is get some fasteners removed here that's holding on our underbody panel. So we're going to have couple of different styles. Some of them will be a 10mm bolt. Pull those out. And there will be a couple that are a push pin style fastener. To get those out, you can take a trim tool or a flathead screwdriver. What you're going to do is just pry underneath the head of it and pop it out like so. Then over here on the driver's side, we're going to have a couple more push pin fasteners to pull out. One right here on the bottom of our frame rail. And if we kind of continue to follow our underbody panel forward, we're going to have another push pin. We can pull out. Once we have this one out, we'll go over to the other side of our underbody panel and remove those fasteners as well. And finally, here in the center towards the front, we're going to have a 10mm nut. Now, before you pull this out, you want to kind of hold the underbody panel because this should be the last fastener securing it. So kind of hold it, and then what we can do is actually lower the panel. You have to kind of work it out of there. Fold these ends in. And once we have it lowered, we can just set it off to the side for now. Now what we can do is get our hardware in place that we're going to use to secure the hitch. So we're going to be using these two holes here on the bottom of our frame rail as attachment points. And the way we're going to get our hardware in is known as the fish wire technique. So we're going to take the coiled end, feed it through this hole closest to the back, and we're going to push it towards the front. And what we're trying to do is to get the coiled end of that fish wire out of this hole right here. We're going to use that as our access hole. This gets hung up, that's okay. Just try to do it again. Sometimes it even helps to kind of put a bend in it, in your pull wire. What we're trying to do, you can see you get that coiled end to drop out of that access hole there. Once we have it like that, we're going to take a spacer block, feed that over the end, a lock washer like this, and a hex bolt. So you're going to take the lock washer, put it over the hex bolt, and then thread it onto the coil end of the pull wire. And then we can feed our hardware into the frame rail there. Kind of tight. Sometimes it's a little easier to kind of feed it in one at a time. I'm just going to pull on the other end of the fish wire until we get our bolt to drop down. And what we need to do is carefully remove our pull wire. Be careful not to push up to accidentally bump our hardware back into the frame. So carefully remove this and use that same technique and hardware combination for this attachment point. And drop it down. Now that I have these two in place, I'm going to repeat the same process over on the other side. We're also going to have one more attachment point over here on the driver's side, so I'd just like to point that out and kind of go over the hardware before we get our hitch up. We're going to use this factory hole right here against this threshold. And so when our hitch is up, there's going to be a tab in the hitch that lines up with that. What you're going to do is take this shorter hex bolt and a flat washer. That'll run through the hitch and this piece of metal. And then you're going to take a flat washer and a nut and thread that on. So just something I wanted to point out. I think it'd be easier to see with the hitch not in the way currently. And over here on the passenger side, it's going to be a little bit different. As you can see, these two attachment points were the exact same as the driver's side. However, you may have a tow hook, a factory tow hook here that bolts into the frame rail. In our case, we didn't, so we didn't have to worry about it. If you do have a little tow hook here, you are going to need to remove that. And if you had that tow hook, you save one of the bolts because you can reuse it. If you don't have the factory bolt, the kit does come with a new one you can use. It's this bolt. You're going to put on a flat washer and a split lock washer, and that's going to line up with the hole here in the side of our frame. It's a weld nut, and so what you can do is just take this, thread it into place, and that's going to help hold the hitch as well. Now with an extra set of hands, we can take our hitch and raise it into position. When you're doing this, be really careful. You don't want to accidentally push your hardware back up into the frame rail. And once we're holding it in place, you're going to take a flat washer and a nut. And you want to get at least one started on each side, hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself while we work on the rest of the hardware. Kind of just a quick tech tip. Whenever you're putting these washers on the bolts there, what you can do is kind of just take your hand and apply some side pressure using the washer against that bolt. That'll help keep it steady and just make it a little bit easier to get the nut started. So when you're putting all this hardware in, it's best just to leave it all hand tight until we have everything in place. And that's just going to make it a little bit easier to get everything lined up. With this one here, you need to take a wrench and hold the other side of the bolt while you tighten down the nut. And for this one over here, on the passenger side, you're going to use a 19mm socket. Now we need to come back and tighten down all of our hardware to the amount specified in our instructions. Now what we need to do is trim out our underbody panel. There's a diagram in the instructions that you can follow. So I went ahead and just marked that out here. And this is relatively thin plastic. I'm just going to use a pair of tin snips to cut this, but you could use a Dremel tool or potentially maybe even a sharp utility knife to get this cut out. Now that we have it trimmed out, we can go ahead and reinstall our underbody panel the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the EcoHitch 2-inch trailer hitch receiver on our 2020 Nissan Leaf.